Night Court ASMR. Hello, darling, and welcome to the Night Court. As always, it's your choice, and you have chosen a dream, a bedtime story, a relaxing tale to invite sweet sleep and pleasant dreams for all listeners. I'm going to just keep this very simple and low-key and blue because I feel like that's sleepy. Also, I am going to see about being a little bit more quiet into my microphone. I like different things in ASMR sometimes. I like a really close-up whisper that comes across quite loud like this, and then I can always lower it if I want to, but some people like it to be a little bit more distant sounding, so we'll see how that goes. This experience tonight is going to be another related to the Stoics, this time Musonius Rufus. Please forgive my pronunciation, as you often must. Before we begin, take a moment to prepare your space and yourself to attend the night court. Ensure you will be undisturbed and unrequired to do anything but listen, engage, and enjoy for the duration of the experience. I'm feeling a little bit low energy myself, so hopefully that helps you to feel calm. Now, if you haven't already, darling, perhaps turn down the lights, or you may be turning them up. In fact, this is another installment of our Stoicism series, which I consider appropriate for the Court of Dawn, when another chapter is beginning. Dawn invites us to set intentions, feel encouragement, and heed the wisdom of our own experience, as well as those who inspire us as we stride into the coming day. But I think ASMR should be used whenever it is for you the most efficacious. I listen to it a lot working, when I'm on my computer, of course when I want to fall asleep. So hopefully, this is Stoicism to sleep to, to study to, and also to wake up to and get ready to greet the day with. So notice how your attention to the details of your body, noticing, feeling it, unclenching your jaw, relaxing your shoulders. Notice how this already creates a sense of ease. And as you relax more, perhaps your eyes close or they open and you greet the day, or you wind down, become attuned to each sound. Imagine a dark star-flecked sky overhead, the glow of a city on the horizon, the cool mountain wind whispering, and the dark embrace of the night. This book, which has been named That One Should Disdain Hardships, is a translation of various passages of writing from Musonius Rufus, who's also Stoic, I think perhaps lesser known. I'm just going to casually flip through, find a few things to read to you to help you orient yourself with who he was and how these writings have been gathered and translated, because I think that's helpful. Musonius Rufus appears to have left little, if anything, in writing himself. The sources in here. They come to us in two broad categories. First, in the form of a series of lectures, sometimes abridged, recorded allegedly by a certain Lucius. And second, as fragments and sayings preserved in the works of other authors, among which the fragments attributed to Epictetus, who we all know, are especially valuable because he is a Stoic too, and Musonius Rufus was one of his teachers. So this stuff is old. It always amazes me how as people we still have the same problems day after day, century after century, year after year, time without end. And the wisdom is so applicable. Additionally, because being a Stoic in this period implied certain modes of behavior, the biographical anecdotes about Musonius are also important. These stories are meant to reflect his identity as a philosopher, and there are some in this book. That's why the introduction mentions it. And they help us understand why Musonius Rufus made such an impression on his contemporaries and was such a remarkable figure. Musonius Rufus shares important features with other Stoics of the Roman imperial era, such as Seneca, our boy, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. I don't think I've read Seneca directly on this channel yet, actually, so far just Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. We'll get there. They tend to downplay the importance of the more technical aspects of philosophy in favor of an emphasis on ethics, or more precisely on ethics in action, which is one of the things I have professed to like about Stoicism, but good to have all perspectives. For this message of exemplary behavior and attitudes, they co-opt Socrates and the Cynics, the latter in a sanitized and perhaps less entertaining version, in which they cease urinating, masturbating, or copulating in public. The Cynics. The later Stoics also minimize the authority of teachers, whether the Stoics of the earlier Hellenistic era or themselves, and emphasize the irreducible moral responsibility of individual agents. That's what I'm here for. Merely learning philosophical doctrine and listening to lectures, they state, will not do any good unless we manage to interiorize the teachings and apply them to daily life. Gotta love a Stoic for that, right? So now we'll go. I think let's go with chapter 2. That man is born with an inclination toward virtue. That's a beautiful thought. Let's see what he has to say about it. I've had a bit of a cold, and my breathing is a little bit like I don't feel like I'm getting great breaths taking these gulps of air, and I apologize if I'm breathing a lot into the microphone. I find that nice sometimes, but also you don't want someone just like breathing down your neck uncomfortably. I'll try to turn away to gather air now and again. That man is born with an inclination toward virtue. All of us, he used to say, are so fashioned by nature that we can live our lives free from one error and nobly, not that one can and another cannot, but all. The clearest evidence of this is the fact that lawgivers lay down for all alike what may be done and forbid what may not be done, exempting from punishment no one who disobeys or does wrong, not the young nor the old, not the strong nor the weak, not anyone whomsoever. And yet if the whole notion of virtue were something that came to us from without, and we shared no part of it by birth, just as in activities pertaining to the other arts, no one who has not learned the art is expected to be free from error. So in like manner in things pertaining to the conduct of life, it would not be reasonable to expect anyone to be free from error who had not learned virtue, seeing that virtue is the only thing that saves us from error in daily living. I should warn you, these aren't just sort of like quotes, like in some of the other Stoic philosophy I've been reading. Like I said, letters, lectures, so it's more long form. I'm sure there's a lot you can garner from it in any case, but I also think it's a little bit more of like a droning background, long form kind of narrative, and depending on your mood or how much you really want to sit and focus on the weighty concepts, and just know that this is sort of more in that format. Now, in the care of the sick, we demand no one but the physician to be free from error, and in handling the lyre, no one but the musician, and in managing the helm, no one but the pilot. But in the conduct of life, it is no longer only the philosopher whom we expect to be free from error, though he alone would seem to be the only one concerned with the study of virtue, but all men alike, including those who have never given any attention to virtue. I love this. Like this idea that virtue is not sort of a trait that we develop as a part of like our chosen life profession, and the examples he gives, the artist, the physician, and so forth, that it's something available to everyone. But all men alike, including those who have never given any attention to virtue. Of course, implying, right, that anyone has a sense of it. Clearly, then, there is no explanation for this other than the human being is born with an inclination toward virtue. Clearly, then, there is no explanation for this other than that the human being is born with an inclination toward virtue. I repeat that because I think it's the main takeaway. And this indeed is strong evidence of the presence of goodness in our nature, that all speak of themselves as having virtue and being good. For take the common man, when asked whether he is stupid or intelligent, no one will confess to being stupid. Generally not. Or again, when asked whether he is just or unjust, not one will say that he is unjust. In the same way, if one asks him whether he is temperate or intemperate, he replies at once that he is temperate, and finally, if one asks whether he is good or bad, he would say that he is good, even though he can name no teacher of virtue or mention any study or practice of virtue he has ever made. Of what then is this evidence, if not of the existence of an innate inclination of the human soul toward goodness and nobleness, and of the presence of the seeds of virtue in each one of us? Moreover, because it is entirely to our advantage to be good, some of us deceive ourselves into thinking that we really are good, while others of us are ashamed to admit that we are not. Of what then is this evidence, if not of the existence of an innate inclination of the human soul toward goodness and nobleness, and of the presence of the seeds of virtue in each one of us? Moreover, because it is entirely to our advantage to us deceive ourselves into thinking that we really are good, while others of us who are ashamed to admit that we are not? Why then pray when one who has not learned letters or music or gymnastics never claims to have knowledge of these arts, nor makes any pretense of knowing them, and is quite unable even to name a teacher to whom he went? Why, I say, does everyone profess that he has virtue? It is because none of those other skills is natural to man, and no human being is born with a natural faculty for them, whereas an inclination toward virtue is inborn in each one of us. I really believe that, and I think another of the ways that you can see this is that even most villains, as in, I don't just mean like theatrical villains, although I think this is true, and I've heard some actors say similar things when they play these characters, but real life villains too, right? They are not generally sort of like aware of their villainy and acting out in a wish to be malicious or cruel. I believe even in reality we see all over the place like truly bad people who do villainous things, right? No one is really the villain in their own story. And, accepting situations where people genuinely are like not capable psychologically of a general understanding of reality, right? And have, truly conditions that lead to sadism. And, even as I say that, like, in order to do what is bad, I think one must have a sense of what is good, right? So I think it's interesting to look at the way that he kind of tries to prove, just with logic and things that we can innately understand, and see that there is an inborn sense of virtue in humans. Okay. I'm going to go to the chapter that is the name of the book, and maybe the leaving will be pleasant as I leave through here. See page 29. Page 29. That one should disdain hardships. Okay, this is a good one. In order to support more easily and more cheerfully those hardships which we may expect to suffer in behalf of virtue and goodness, it is useful to recall what hardships people will endure for unworthy ends. Thus, for example, consider what intemperate lovers undergo for the sake of evil desires, and how much exertion others expend for the sake of making a profit, and how much suffering those who are pursuing fame endure, and bear in mind that all of these people submit to all kinds of toil and hardship voluntarily. It is not then monstrous that they for no honorable reward endure such things, while we for the sake of the ideal good, that is, not only the avoidance of evil such as wrecks our lives, but also the acquisition of virtue, which we may call the provider of all goods, are not ready to bear every hardship, and yet would not anyone admit how much better it is, in place of exerting oneself to win someone else's wife, to exert oneself to discipline one's desires, in place of enduring hardships for the sake of money, to train oneself to want little, instead of giving oneself trouble about getting notoriety, to give oneself trouble how not to thirst for notoriety. Such a lesson in this, one I think most of us recognize as a familiar struggle. Instead of trying to find a way to injure an envied person, to inquire how not to envy anyone. And instead of slaving a sycophant sycophants do, to win false friends, to undergo suffering in order to possess true friends. And that's powerful stuff. Now, since in general toil and hardship are a necessity for all men, both for those who seek the better ends and for those who seek the worse, it is preposterous that those who are pursuing the better are not much more eager in their efforts than those for whom there is small hope of reward for all their plans. Yet when we see acrobats face without concern their difficult tasks and risk their very lives in performing them, turning somersaults over upturned swords or walking ropes set at a great height, or flying through the air like birds where one misstep means death, all of which they do for a miserably small recompense, shall we not be ready to endure hardship for the sake of complete happiness? For surely there is no other end in becoming good than to become happy and to live happily for the remainder of our lives. One might reasonably reflect upon characteristics even of certain animals, which are very well calculated to shame us into endurance of hardships. At all events, cocks and quails, although they have no understanding of virtue, as man has, and know neither the good nor the just, and strive for none of those things, nevertheless fight against each other, and even when maimed, stand up and endure until death, so as not to submit the one to the other. How much more fitting, then, it is that we stand firm and endure, when we know that we are suffering from some good purpose, either to help our friends or to benefit our city, or to defend our family, or best and most imperative, to become good and just and self-controlled, a state which no man achieves without hardships. And so it remains for me to say that the man who is unwilling to exert himself almost always convicts himself as unworthy of good. Since we gain every good by toil, these words and others like them, he then spoke, exhorting and urging his listeners to look upon hardship with disdain. Now I'm going to skip around to the end of the book and read fragments. So these are just bits of things that he said or wrote. Not full thoughts, but maybe more like short quotes for brain fuel. 22. It is not possible to live well today unless one thinks of it as his last. 23. What indictment can we make against tyrants when we ourselves are much worse than they? For we have the same impulses as theirs, but not the same opportunity to indulge them. Now you may or may not believe that, but I think there's something there about how we all have it in us to do the wrong thing, just as much as we perhaps have it in us to do the right. We don't all have the same means to enact both. Though I suppose we have the same means to enact the good. 24. If one were to measure what is agreeable by the standard of pleasure, nothing would be pleasanter than self-control. And if one were to measure what is to be avoided by pain, nothing would be more painful than lack of self-control. 25. Musonius said that there was no more shameful inconsistency than to recall the weakness of the body under stress of pain, but to forget it in the enjoyment of pleasure. 26. One begins to lose his hesitation to do unseemly things when one loses his hesitation to speak of them. No, I don't know about that. I think that's a bigger thought. I don't know. I suppose it depends upon the context, right? If one is willing to speak thoughts that are, destructive, I suppose that probably means he, upon continuing to speak them, would become more inclined to act upon them. 27. And if you choose to hold fast to what is right, do not be irked by difficult circumstances, but reflect on how many things have already happened to you in life in ways that you did not wish, and yet they have turned out for the best. That's a good one to recall. Once again, if you choose to hold fast to what is right, do not be irked by difficult circumstances, but reflect on how many things have already happened to you in life in ways that you did not wish, and yet they have turned out for the best. Choose to die well while it is possible, lest shortly it may become necessary for you to die, but it will no longer be possible to die well. Number 29. One who by living is of use to many has not the right to choose to die, unless by dying he may be of use to more. I suppose here, he was part of the imperial Rome, so maybe we have to recall some of this in the context of, there's war going on all over the place today too, but I think maybe it felt more ever-present. One who by living is of use to many has not the right to choose to die, unless by dying he may be of use to more. I wonder here if also he's talking about taking one's life. Number 30. You will earn the respect of all men if you begin by earning the respect of yourself. Amen. Hallelujah. You will earn the respect of all men if you begin by earning the respect of yourself. Man, that is so important. I don't say I'm perfect at it, but I would like, as I think many of us would, to strive toward less hypocrisy. Number 31. Those men do not live long who have become accustomed to say to their subjects, in defense of whatever they do, not, it is my duty, but it is my will. 32. Do not expect to enjoin right doing upon men who are conscious of your own wrongdoing. Throne shade. Toward subjects, one should strive to be regarded with awe rather than with fear. Reverence attends the one, bitterness the other. Oh, yes, so true. I wish more world leaders thought like that. The treasures of, I skipped around. We'll go to 35. Since the fates have spun out the lot of death, for all alike he is blessed who dies not late, but well. I suppose he has more writing on what it is to die well, though I can't organically recall, but he talks about things that way. I think we can all probably decide what's meant by that, but I'll have to look for more from him. Since the fates have spun out the lot of death for all alike, he is blessed who dies not late, but well. This man I received from you, an insolent and violent creature. I return him to you, a reasonable man and good citizen. Some of these are clips from, again, taken out of context, so it will sometimes be the case that we're not getting a direct quote, but someone paraphrasing, right, telling of a story of something Musonius said. 40. Rufus from Epictetus on friendship. But most of all, the work of nature is this, to make desire and impulse, to act fit close closely with the perception of that which is seemly and useful. To share the common notion that we shall be despised by others if in every way we do not strive to harm the first enemies we meet, is the mark of mean-minded and ignorant men. For we say that the despicable man is recognized among other things by his inability to harm his enemies, but actually he is much more easily recognized by his inability to help them. Rufus, from the remarks of Epictetus on friendship as well. So from the same source. Of such a character, the nature of the universe was and is and will be. And it is not possible for things that come into existence to come into existence differently from what the way they now do. And in this process of change and transformation, not only human beings and other creatures of earth have had a part, but also the divine beings, and even the four elements are changed and transformed upwards and downwards. That is, earth becomes water, and water air, and air is again transformed into ether. And there is the same process of transformation downwards. If a man resolves to focus his thoughts on these things, and persuades himself willingly to accept the inevitable, he will lead a life well measured and in harmony with the universe. Thracia was in the habit of saying, "I should rather be put to death today than be banished tomorrow." What then did Rufus say to him? "If you choose that as the heavier misfortune, what a foolish choice to make. But if, as the lighter, who has given you the choice? Who has given you the choice? Are you not willing to train yourself to be satisfied with what has been given to you?" I think that last is really a big theme here. Are you not willing to be satisfied with what has been given to you? I don't think that that's saying we shouldn't strive, but, this idea that suffering comes from wanting, I think, is sort of a thread that runs through a lot of his teachings. And isn't it better rather than seeking pleasure to not need certain things which are painful or not helpful to obtain anyway? The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus was one of the most influential teachers of his era, emphasized ethics in action, displayed in all aspects of life. In his own words, philosophy is nothing else than to search out by reason what is right and proper, and by deeds to put it into practice. So not a useless academic discipline at all. But one must have some sense of what one's own life philosophy is, I think, whether it comes from some external source or not. And I think if we don't decide, we've decided, right? That's a form of choosing, because we all believe something. Even if we're not able to articulate it, we're all living by some code. And I think it's important to try to articulate it, at least to oneself, if not to others. Well, thanks for listening. And I'm sorry if you've heard bits of noises here and there. I've got neighbors who, depending upon the time of day, can be very lovely and quiet. And other times, not so much. So, and I do have the padded out sound studio, but occasionally I need to, do videos at times that are not convenient just because of, what I have going on in my life. So thanks for your patience, and rush this. I do hope to read more of him and in general other Stoics. Thanks for listening. And please enjoy the dark embrace of the night or the dewy glow of the dawn. And I hope you can go through your day with a few of these thoughts popping around in your head in ways that are helpful. Thank you so much for being here. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It does make a difference. It really does. And subscribe for more. And I always love to hear from people about what types of videos they want and what kind of content. So please participate and I'll try to make it for you. Also, I've been asked about custom videos quite a lot lately. I'll mention this elsewhere, but pretty informative videos. So let me also just mention that I will have soon a way of requesting those. So stay tuned. You will hear